So this week's Parsha, the story of Yosef and his brothers finally comes to a climax and an end. There are two ways to learn Chumash Bereshis. We should chas v'sholem not learn Chumash Bereshis lefi pshutoi, because the Oves HaKadoshim, Yosef and all his brothers, were tzaddikim at a level that we cannot even understand. So there are two different approaches. One approach is the approach of the Mekubalim. Nothing is lefi pshutoi. Whatever the Oves did, whatever the Shvotim did, were all only meyached yechudim and metaken tikunim, and whatever they did affects all the olam misalyonim, and nothing is lefi pshutoi. The other approach of most Rishonim is, yes, they were human, but whatever they did was always with a kavona zaka in Tahira, and sometimes, and this is Yesod the Rambam writes, an amazing Yesod the Rambam writes in Parshat Mishnah of Masechet Bruchos. Sometimes the Kodesh Baruch Hu takes away the bechira of people when a Kodesh Baruch Hu has some greater plan. And that's the story of David and Bathsheba, Yehuda in Tamar, in a way that is beyond our understanding. Melech HaMashiach needs to come out of David and Bathsheba. Melech HaMashiach is a result of Yehuda and Tamar. So sometimes the Kodesh Baruch Hu takes away the bechira of people in order to achieve the greater goal, which is far beyond the level of our understanding why it needs to be this way. So there are two big questions when we learn the story of Yosef and his brothers. If you learn it lefi pshutoi, Yosef seems to enjoy torturing his brothers. What does he want from their lives? You know, your brothers came, you haven't seen them for so long. Just why the first moment you meet? Why don't you say, Tayar Bridalach, you know who I am? I'm Yosef. And hug and kiss and bring your father. No. He locks them up. He says, you're spies. You committed a crime. And they beg and they cry. And he says, oh, you have a younger brother? I want to see him. And his brothers say, we can't bring him. Our father would die. And he insists, bring Binyamin. Finally sees Binyamin. And then the story of the Gevia Kesef, and why? So I say this. Yosef HaTzadik has Ruach HaKodesh, and he knows the story of Asura Aruga Malchus. And the Madrash says that the Asura Aruga Malchus are a kapora on the 10 brothers that sold Yosef. Yosef also knows that it is his duty, his obligation to bring a tikkun to this Aveira, to this hate, because if he doesn't, the price Klal Yisrael will pay throughout the ages will be horrific and unbearable. And he knows this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects of me. It's harder for him than it is for his brothers. Ubemistorim tivke nafshi. But he knows this is something I need to do. And I need to do it not for myself, but for all the coming generations of Klal Yisrael. What was the tikkun? When the brothers start to make a cheshbon and nefesh, locked up in a cell in Mitzrayim, it's last week's parsha. Aval ashemem anachenu, ki ro'inu b'tzoros nafshoi, b'schanenoi eleinu velo shamanu. They seem to say, we were innocent bystanders. And he was crying and we did nothing. Is that all? You did nothing? You're the guys that threw him into the pit. You're the guys that sold him as a slave. You're the guys that lied to your father and said, we found this ksonis pasum, it was bloody. No. Aim kol chatos, the origin of your behavior was a lack of achava. Your brother was crying to you. How could you see a brother crying and ignore him? What happened to you? Ro'inu b'tzoras nafshoi b'schananoi eleinu v'lo shamanu. That is aim kol chatos. And Yosef was there. He was the one that was crying. And he knows that he needs to bring them to the greatest achava. So he goes through this process, crying every moment when he's not together with his brothers. And when does he finally break down? When Yehuda says, Yeshev no avdachu tachas anar, ki avdachu ora v'sanar. From Yehuda's point of view, Binyamin committed a crime because Yehuda doesn't know who planted that cup in Binyamin's bag. From Binyamin's point of view, Binyamin committed a terrible crime. You stole the cup of the Mishnah Lamelech? Are you crazy? And nevertheless, Yehuda says, he's my brother. If you want to kill him, kill me. If you want to take him as a slave, I'm the one. I'm your slave. Let him go. And then Yosef says, I have achieved my goal. If one of the brothers, my brothers, is willing to die for another, that is what I am working at. And at that moment, and he can stand it no longer. So Yosef's avoida was to bring the brothers back to Achava, to be mechaper on lo ruina b'tzoras nafshoi b'schananoi eleinu. The Or Chaim asks, how come Yosef doesn't let Yankov know that he's alive when he has the power to do so? He's next to the king. Why doesn't he just send a message or send a letter to Yankov, I'm alive? The Or Chaim says he didn't want to embarrass his brothers. Do you need to care more for your tzaddik, your father, or for your brothers that at the end of the day they did something horrible? And you could let Yankov know you're alive without telling him the story how you got there. You don't need to hurt your brothers, just telling Yankov you're alive. Lani is daiti. Yosef realizes from the first moment, what's happening here is not normal. It's not coincidence. On one hand, when the brothers throw him into the pit and then sell him, he says, I know my brothers. This cannot be. They're tzaddikim. They're great people. How is this happening? What happened to them? So what I say now is slightly different than what I said a moment ago. And Yosef says, this is min hashamayim. So he's sold as a slave. And he happens to be bought up by one of the most important, prominent people in Mitzrayim, Potiphera. And he's working in his house. And then his wife starts to pester him, which is crazy. Not enough boys out there. A Jewish slave. And Yosef Tzadik Yesod Olam. He wants nothing to do with it. He's thrown into jail. Happens to be there with two very important people, two ministers. And they have a bad dream. And Yosef, did he take a course in Pislan Chaloimus? Did he have a diploma in Pislan Chaloimus? I'm sure he never tried it before. Why would he? What does he have? He's not a Pesach Chaloimus. But he knows this is Ashgocha Protis. What's happening here is not coincidence. And if they're troubled, they had a bad dream. Probably it's my duty. Otherwise, what am I doing here? Gives it a try. Just guesses. And then it works out. So from one stage to the other, Yosef is convinced more and more. Yesh po mahalach eloki. Something very big is happening here, far bigger. It's not about me. This is something that the Kodesh Baruch Hu was planning out. So he's Pesach Aloimis, And it works, and he's shocked. It's the first time I tried this. I have no idea how I got here. And it works out. And then Pari has a bad dream, and he's brought to Pari, and Yosef says, well, happened once, let's try it again. And he's Parshat. And then that stupid king says, wow, you're going to be the finance minister. Why would he be a finance minister? Because he was Parshat Elohim. What does one have to do with the other? So he's going to take care of the hugest logistic nightmare and administration. Why? Because he solved Paro's dream. What does one have to do with the other? Why do you think he's going to be a good administrator? Because he was Parshat Elohim. That's Paro's stupidity. And Yosef understands something great and huge is happening here, and nothing is b'derech hateva. So if Yosef doesn't have the liberty to let Yaakov know, if Yaakov needs to know, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will tell him. Yosef just goes with the flow. Just does one moment, one step after the other. What he understands, HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects from him right now, here and now, by the consequences. And that is why Yosef doesn't tell Yaakov anything, because I don't want to mess things up, says Yosef. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu calling the shots, has nothing to do with me. That is how we need to learn this parsha, from beginning to end. And everything is for the future of Klal Yisrael. So next week we finish Bereshis, we start Shemos. And the Ramban writes in his introduction to Shemos, Masa Ovas Yetzira Labonim. Not only Simen Labonim, Yetzira Labonim. Everything the Ovas did was focused on the future of Klal Yisrael. Not about them, not about their day, not about their age, not about their space. Yetzira Labonim. And that is how we need to learn the story of Yosef and his brothers, as we just explained. So, yesterday was the last day of Hanukkah, and we daven that the Oros of Hanukkah, which we spoke about last week, Hanukkah is the Ora Torah, that's the Ora Gones, that the Oros of Hanukkah shall continue to be with us, and we learn Torah in merit of the Chashmenu and the Mercedes Nefesh to be mevatel, to fight the Gzeir of Lashkichim Torasecho, and we should be able to continue to learn and grow and come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we should be Zoche B'Kora B'Yameinu to be as Goyel Tzedek, B'Mheru V'Yameinu, Amen. Good Shabbos.